Hello and welcome to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. I'm Steve Smith, your host. Now, I do have a brand new microphone, so I hope this is coming through nice and clear. We have had an interesting start to autumn here in Australia for the year 2021. Welcome to episode number 16. Now, on today's episode, a little introduction. We start off with walking the fairways as normal, where I talk about as much as I've been able to find and hear and listen to about what's happening on golf courses throughout Australia, and certainly what's been happening after the floods on the east coast of the country. We'll also see a return to my favourite, the Greenkeepers Shed segment, where I want to talk about the psyche behind golf course setup, but also I do want to make mention that I have been missing for a little while. I have been travelling the countryside. If you've been following my Instagram page, all over the place, up and down, all over Australia, as much as I've been able to do for about a four or 5 week period. And I've been getting plenty of content that I want to be able to share with you over the next few episodes of the podcast. Let's go. Welcome to Walking the Fairways, and to start off, we have to start with the floods of the east coast of Australia, particularly New South Wales, that happened in March of this year. So it was only last month. And look, I'm just going to firstly start off by saying I'm talking about golf courses. So let's put things into perspective and not forget that people lost their lives during this disaster. And there were numerous people that lost their homes, others lost their livelihoods, and I'm talking, most businesses that were worked on the land. So we're talking loss of stock, cattle, sheep, that sort of thing. Others lost their crops. So the primary producers of the east coast of the country. Shops were lost, businesses that had shops in townships that were flooded through their main streets and that sort of thing all the way up the coast. People lost pets. So look, it's all extremely difficult to consider if you weren't affected like those that were deeply affected. And like I said, I'm talking about golf courses, so we're trying to keep things into perspective. But that said, there's been a lot of damage on golf, and that's what I'm here to tell you about. And some of the golf clubs that are working extremely hard, and they've got a lot of work ahead of them to bring these courses of theirs back to great shape that we know and love. So I'm going to mention a few clubs and courses that were hammered, but by no means are these the ones that are the only ones that were affected. I'm just mentioning a few that I know of, a little bit about myself as well. And I'm going to start off with Western Sydney, because Sydney was the capital city probably that was hammered the most. And we're talking courses like Dunheved Golf Club, which is in the west of Sydney. Now, all these places are pretty close to the Hawkesbury-Nepean River, which is why they went under in this extreme rainfall weather event. Dunheved went under, and like all these courses in Western Sydney, it's the second time in 13 months. For that to happen at Dunheved, it's pretty extreme, but they got away with not losing their greens that some of the other courses have had happen. And the waters receded reasonably quickly, and the course was up and playable again with not too much long-term difficult damage. But needless to say, it did go under, and the guys and the team there under Luke Sligar had a bit of work to clean up, and they did so quite efficiently. But a couple of other courses that I'm about to mention have got some more serious damage. So Dunheved went under twice in 13 months, and all these courses did. Linwood at Pitt Town is a course that I know, and former superintendent Matt Bailey, who's now the general manager, and Nathan Ball is now the superintendent on course. These guys have some serious work ahead of them. They had 17 of their 18 playing greens go underwater, and at its deepest point, we're talking 8 meters underwater. Now, if you stand on the ground and look up at a building, you're talking something like a 4-story building or thereabouts. That's how deep the water was at the deepest part of the golf course when the flood waters rose up to their maximum height, which is quite devastating. And from that, it took, I think, nearly a week or so for the waters to completely recede off the golf course, if not longer, to be honest. And they lost a lot of greens. They lost a lot of greens. That the grass died on their greens because they were completely submerged, permanently underwater for such a long period of time. and they're in the process of rebuilding their golf course, rebuilding their greens, reseeding them. There's a whole lot of work that's gone on, getting the fairways back up, cleaning off all the silt and mud. So Linwood are in the midst, and they're doing such an incredible job. If you see them on social media, or if you know, or if you're a regular there, you'll know what's going on. You'll have heard, no doubt. But they've got a lot of work ahead of them, and they're doing such a great job of it. Another one along the Hawkesbury is Riverside Oaks. Now, Riverside is Sydney's only 36-hole facility, and it consists of 2 courses, the original golf course, being the Ganguru course as it's named now, and the new course done by Bob Harrison called Bungool, which sits out on the western side of the club land and is literally on the banks of the Hawkesbury River. Now, what I've heard is that they've actually had 3 greens washed away. Now, I'm yet to confirm how much damage and what that actually means, but basically 3 greens are missing. So something along those lines. Now, to the extent of which, is there much other damage on that course in particular as well that needs to be completely rebuilt? No doubt that could be the case, because it literally is on the banks of the Hawkesbury. So some extreme damage that's happened and occurred out at Riverside. Fortunate thing is they've got 2 golf courses, and I believe Bungool was the worst affected. They've still got Ganguru out there as well that hopefully is able to be played reasonably, because, like I said, all these golf clubs have been severely hit. Now, another one that's been affected is Windsor Golf Club. It's not quite so on the banks of the Hawkesbury Nepean, but it is a little bit away on one of the feeding creek systems that swell up in these extreme floods. They got the lowest points of their golf course is quite low, and they've got quite a high point up to the clubhouse. So there's a big fall down to the back end of the golf course along one of the creek lines, and it went underwater for quite a long period of time. But also the amount of silt and mud that Windsor collected on their golf course is pretty extreme, and we're talking a few 100 millimetres of silt and mud on its lowest parts of the golf course. Now, if you think about a ruler, standard ruler, we all remember from school, 30-centimetre ruler, that's what we're talking about, a foot of mud and silt that needs to be cleaned up out on Windsor Golf Course, and they've been doing so. So look, these courses have been in the mix of cleaning up for the best part of 5 weeks or so since this event, and it's been quite extreme, and that's just a couple of courses in Sydney, to name a few, that's been happening. So we wish them all the best in their continuing efforts to clean up, and it's been quite extreme. But I'm going to talk about some more courses as we move further up the coast. So it wasn't just Sydney that was affected, and you might have heard a few other things. So moving up north, there was more flooding up the coast, such as places like Taree Golf Course, and Taree sits on the Manning River. The Manning River and the Manning Valley was very, very much affected by this. They were one of the other central points of the extreme rainfall that they had. And Taree Golf Club went under. Again, similar lay of the land to Windsor, where the back end of the course is down low-lying along the creek lines, and you come up at some of the higher points up towards the clubhouse. And so the back end of the course was completely underwater again, low-lying areas, which are, like I said, these floodwater levels were in the major flood level, and it was for such a long period of time that they were up so high and quite extreme. And at Taree, the flooding was that bad that if anyone knows the road heading north from Sydney to Brisbane is the Pacific Highway, it's basically all new all the way along now, dual carriageway, and has been this particular area at Taree for a number of years. But I probably thought that when it was built, it was flood proof in the sense that it was above the major level. Obviously, it wasn't above this flood, because some parts of the Pacific Highway actually went underwater for a couple of days and closed the link between Sydney and Brisbane, which is, I think, from my understanding and from memory, is the first time it's happened since that road was built. So quite extreme. We continue a little bit further north to Kew Country Club, which is between Taree and Port Macquarie. Now, it also copped it. Luckily for them, their greens are high enough and didn't go underwater, but their pump shed was not so much in one of those areas where, usually by a dam or bore and that sort of stuff. So it went underwater, and subsequently their pumps have been destroyed because they were submerged. There's a significant cost in that for the club to repair and get their course up and running. And we know that when the floods recede, we're still talking about the top, 300 millimetres of soil that you give it a week of dry weather, or 2 weeks of dry weather, I should say, and all of a sudden your turf needs water again, needs moisture again. So These guys have quickly got to turn this around to get their irrigation up and running. Otherwise, then we'll see turf start to stress out from dry. So it's kind of this battle that you quite often don't realise is going to occur or reoccur so quickly. You go from flood, only takes a couple of weeks of dry weather, a few windy days, and all of a sudden you need to get that water distributed out to some areas of your turf again. So losing your pump shed is pretty important. It was very important, and hopefully the guys have been able to get on top of that and have something set up with a bit of help to be able to distribute water back through the irrigation system at Kew Golf Club. So we wish everyone here along the way all the best. Moving further north still, we go to Southwest Rocks, which is Southwest Rocks Golf Club. As parts of its course went under, but the biggest part for them was, and this is a strange story, the golf course itself was cut off from the township to the point where Superintendent David Hobday was caught out and couldn't get actually home to his house from the golf course. Now, as a result of being cut off and cut to the side of the golf course away from his home, he ended up having to set up camp in the Greenkeepers Shed to stay for 6 days. Not for 1 day, for 6 days. That's the extent of these floods. So a really serious scenario where, David was caught and had to stay at the club in the Greenkeepers Shed, cut away from his family for the best part of nearly a week. So he would have no doubt been, monitoring the golf course as well. And I say, as a superintendent, a golf course is your baby as much as your kids at home. Look, pretty intense stuff, and that would have been a difficult time, no doubt, for David and his family, but obviously safe and well from all reports. But a 6-day stint being cut off from home and having to stay at the Greenkeepers Shed and set up camp. So, yeah, pretty impressive stories that are coming out from this event. Now we move further north still to Nambucca Heads Island Golf Club, and I've mentioned Nambucca in one of my golf travel segments a few podcasts ago. Great golf course on an island in the middle of the Nambucca River. Now, needless to say that, most of the course went underwater, except for 4 greens, because the river swelled, extreme floods, but only 4 greens were left exposed, which was good. But once the waters receded, there was an unwanted deposit of around 150 odd millimetres of mud and silt across most of the golf course. So a little bit more so than I mentioned at Windsor. 6 inches thereabouts of mud and silt, but for this course being reasonably flat on an island in the middle of the river, it's across nearly all the golf course. These guys have got help coming from everywhere, which is great to see. They've got a hell of a clean-up ahead of them too, probably a little bit similar to Linwood in Western Sydney. And to give you a perspective, they've received a total of over 1,000 millimetres of rain during this flood event. Now that's 1 metre of rain. 1 metre. Just try and get your heads around that. That's nearly waist high of rain in 8 days. 8 days. Putting it into perspective, Coffs Harbour, which is only just slightly further north than Nambucca Heads, is known for having quite a high rainfall average per year, and they average 1.7 metres of rain per year. Nambucca received 1 metre, so more than half of the local average thereabouts in just 8 days. Not 6 months, 8 days. So pretty extreme. That's the level. That's a perspective level of how much rain had fallen for this, and that's why it was such an extensive flood. So, we do feel for so many people. Like I said, lots of people were affected in many other ways, but these guys on these golf courses and these clubs are trying to rebuild their courses, and they're doing a hell of a job about it. Heading to the New South Wales-Queensland border, further north still, some parts of the river course at Coolangatta Tweed went under for a period of time as the Tweed River became swollen with these floods. There's so many courses affected I keep speaking of. We move into Queensland. Palmer-Coolum had parts of the course go under into the glades on the Gold Coast, where Superintendent Glenn Gibson Smith said that their course has now gone underwater 5 times in 13 months after this last and most recent flood event. Now, it's on the banks of a tributary river system in the Gold Coast area where there's lots of different waterways and so on, and lots of creek lines, and it's all pretty low lying. But I've spoken to Glenn before, and he tells me how much the golf course has the ability to go under because it's such a floodplain, low-lying area. But 5 times in 13 months, I can't even consider how difficult that must be to get your head around. So look, we wish all these people all the best, and these clubs, we want to see them come back. There's a lot of work. If you're a member, volunteer your help however you can. Hopefully you've got a bit of time to help out with these guys. And look, like I said, it's been the best part of 5 or 6 weeks now where we're starting to see some of these courses that they've reopened some of them in the way of places like Dunheaven, but some of the other courses have got a little bit more work to do still before they get their courses up and open. Places like Linwood that are reseeding 17 of their 18 greens, is my understanding. So look, and I hope to bring you a little bit more. Keep an eye on my Instagram account and Facebook account, because I'm going to show you some more footage and be catching up with a few superintendents and talking to them about what's been involved in the recovery for an event as such as this, such a big flood event. So we wish them all the best, and difficult times, but I'm sure we'll see these courses come out better than they were, no doubt. Now I'm going to start moving around the country for walking the fairways. We're going to start roaming around, and we'll go straight. I haven't done much talked about Western Australia for a while in Perth. We're going to go straight to WA, straight to Point Walter Golf Club, which is located between Perth City itself and Fremantle. So it's just slightly southwest of the city itself, and it's on the south side of the beautiful Swan River. And if you've ever had a chance to go to Perth, it is a magnificent waterway. It's probably slightly a smaller version than Sydney Harbour, but it is quite magnificent and a beautiful space. Now, they've just been rebuilding their second green complex at Point Walter Golf Club, and it's a 9-hole golf course. So it's they're going about this in rejuvenating the course in some part, and the second green complex was something that it's been identified. The old green clearly was decided that it needed to be, that the club decided that it needed changing, and seeing some of the images of the construction that I've come across show that the green was also being invaded by tree roots of some nearby large trees. That makes it difficult when you're maintaining the green. It saps the life out of your greens from nutrients. They compete. The tree roots are competing with your turf for nutrients, for moisture, all that sort of thing. And there are ways of dealing with these things where you don't have to dig up a green and rebuild it. But they've decided to kill 2 birds with one stone. But they're trying to create a new complex. They're going about giving it a bit of a change, improving it somewhat, and they've changed up the levels a little bit. The contours, introduced some contouring to the green, and to create a totally new surface. And this also includes a greenside bunker. It was a bunkerless green before, and now they've got a greenside bunker, which is now part of the new complex that it previously didn't have. So a little bit of a change up. If you're a regular, a social player, something to Point Walter Golf Club, it's something that's a little bit of a change that's going to come about and give you a little bit more of a challenge to that golf hole, and looking forward to seeing how that one improves and grows in to the golf course there at Point Walter in Perth. So good things happening there at a little 9-hole golf course in Perth, just outside Perth City itself. Now we stay in Perth in WA to Collier Park Golf Club. Now it's located just south of the city centre itself, and it's a public golf course. Now, this course is a 27-hole facility with 3 9-hole loops, if you like, is how they've set it up for people when they go out there and play. And they've only just days ago opened up a brand new addition to their golf complex, being that of a mini golf course. Yes, another golf facility that's adding a mini golf course, much like Link Shell Cove that I've recently mentioned, have just put one in, and also like other established mini golf courses at golf clubs, like Yarra Bend in Melbourne, for example, and certainly one of my favourites around is Parkwood Golf Club up on the Gold Coast. So these mini golf courses are becoming a really good addition to a lot of club facilities, and they're seeing a positive engagement with the local community and attracting new people and attracting people in general to come and have fun, especially kids and families, which is great. So on a side note, Collier Park is managed by a company called Club Links, who obviously have a good model for golf because they manage some other very popular golf courses around the country, such as the Cut in WA. So they've got a little bit over in WA. Centenary Park as well. So they do Centenary Park, Settlers Run and Moona Links in Victoria. And they also look after Moore Park and Bingara Golf Club in Sydney. So they've put this in at Collier Park, and they understand that these are attractions to new clients, to new players, to getting people into the sport. At the end of the day, look, let's not beat around the bush. These places are businesses. They're there to make money. But I look at it from the outside and go, they're attracting new people. Why would they invest at Collier Park? Why would Club Links invest in Collier Park putting in a mini golf course if they thought they weren't going to get their money back? So that means they're attracting people. And like I mentioned, Links Shell Cove, they're putting it in. That's a great model. And I've recently heard that talked about on another podcast as well. And, mention it was on the Good Golf podcast. And, really good stuff to hear that these golf clubs are seeing a benefit to putting something slightly different in and not just sticking to the 18-hole model of a club and their members that, that we've always seen in for a long period of time. There are other models at work, and it's about attracting. I love this, attracting new people to the sport. So great to see what's happening at Collier Park. And, like I said, these guys at Club Links, by the sounds of it, they know what they're doing, and that clearly there's an appetite for mini golf to be added to Collier Park in Perth. So, look, great to see. Move into South Australia, Regency Park Golf Club in Adelaide, just north of the city centre. Now, it's a little 9-holer that's now adding, wait for it, a mini golf course to their golf club. Now, construction has just begun, and it's looking to open in July. So pretty quick turnaround. And like I mentioned, it's another golf facility adding mini golf. All good things, people, and anything to get people enjoying the game, especially kids, I'm all for. So good things are happening there at Regency Park in Adelaide. So no one's missing out. It's all over the country. These things are happening, and they're getting people out. So if you listen to the podcast, I'm sure you'll go out and you remember putt of days gone by, but like I said, my favourite is Parkwood up on the Gold Coast, and they've got one of the best mini golf courses going around. And these they're not called putt anymore. They are mini golf. It's small versions of golf with putting. It's a lot of fun. Families, kids parties, the whole lot. Even adults get out there and have a good time. So really good stuff to see, and I'm so excited about it happening at Regency Park as well, which is really good for a little 9-holer golf course in the city. We move down to Tassie, going to Royal Hobart in Tasmania. Now, they've recently started construction of their new all-weather synthetic turf practice base. So there's a little bit happening there to provide for the members. Clearly something the club wants to offer for their members and their guests for all-weather practice. And not all clubs have that. They're obviously going to have cover over the top. It won't be when you concentrate play and practice in small zones. These synthetic areas work well because you don't have to move it. So it's minimal, I suppose, construction with overhead roof to allow for all weather practice, and then also knowing that you're going to concentrate the wear and the practice damage in small areas. So it has to be synthetic, but that's what's happening at Royal Hobart. So a little bit of an addition to their club facilities, which is really good for the members and their guests, like I mentioned. So it's keeping the guys busy on the golf course as well, the greenkeepers and the superintendent and his team. Really good to keep them busy down there, and they're obviously getting on with the job for new stuff happening at Royal Hobart. Moving into Victoria to a somewhat regional favourite golf course. Now, I haven't played here, but I've heard a lot about it, and that's Leongatha Golf Club in Victoria. Now, it's a rural golf course, well respected with a big heart. That's how I describe Leongatha. Now, I've not played there, like I mentioned, but I've heard about it and how good it is. It's between somewhere and nowhere, really, without sounding rude. It's on the way southeast from Melbourne to Wilson's Promontory. So if you know Victoria, you've probably got an idea where I'm talking about. It's a bit of a drive. It's it's over 2 hours from Melbourne, if that gives you a bit of an idea of how far we're talking. Well, they've been busy. They've been busy at Leongatha. They've been busy with a working bee of volunteers laying new turf on their rebuilt 16th tee complex, 16th green surrounds, and also their 17th green surrounds. Like I mentioned, it's a rural golf course, a regional track. These clubs do survive and do love and need that help from their membership. The volunteers that get out there and give these greenkeepers a hand. You can't do this sort of stuff with a team of 2, 3 or 4. It's really, really difficult. So their membership are helping out. It's a great project. It's improving the surfaces. They're putting down some fescue, which is a great surface down that end of Australia. We know and love the fescue, running and bouncing game a little bit more. Great surfaces to have. So Leongatha, it's an improvement to the course. If you know the course, you'll know what's going on by way of improving down there. So really good to hear. And look, well done. Well done to the team of volunteers on doing a great job down there, on their club. And if you're thinking of a regional round of golf in Eastern Victoria, you must put Leongatha on your list. Like I said, I've heard a lot about it. I'm looking to one day get down there myself, but there you go. Throw it in your mix, and that's one to play, and they're doing a bit of work improving the place as always, which is great to see. We move north to Sydney, into New South Wales, straight into Sydney in the eastern suburbs to East Lakes Golf Club. Now, I've mentioned East Lakes before. They've been doing so much work on their tees and rebuilding their tees. They've finally finished rebuilding them all after a monumental amount of work being completed by Superintendent Nathan Bradbury and his team. And they've been putting down Sandarana Cooch, which I've mentioned I'm a massive fan of. It's my favourite grass. They've been putting that down on their tees and rebuilding their shapes and levels. And some of the tees they're also building in some new fescue mounding around some of the areas of the walk-ins. And that's also going to give a nice little detailed touch to the approach to the tees when you come off from the previous green. It's a bit of a reveal. It's something that they build into a lot. Look, just got back from Barnbugle. There's a lot of reveal down there, trust me. And it's spectacularly done between the dunes and so on. But these little touches, they're little nuances, little design details that are happening down there at East Lakes, and I think they're going to be nice. They're really nice touches to see. So great to see that whole lot of work, like I said, monumental amount of work that's been happening down at East Lakes Golf Club, where they finally finished rebuilding their tee. So come springtime, now that this has all been up and it'll be grown in before it gets to winter, spring's going to go boom, and the place is going to be spectacular. So if you're a regular at East Lakes, you'll love what's coming ahead for you. Moving north into Queensland to Cannon Hill in Brisbane, and they're continuing to move forward with with the construction of the golf course with some of the images that I'm seeing. And I've just recently seen something which caught my eye, and that's of a railway sleeper bunker face being constructed. So this is look, we've probably seen it on television. The Pete Dye, the designer, the architect, the famous American golf architect, is famous for the railroad ties, as they call it in the States. We call them railway sleepers here. Look, it's a design touch, a feature. Some people love it, some people don't, but that's now going to be a feature built into Cannon Hill. And it's an interesting detail, and it's being done by Pacific Coast Design, who are the architects behind the project up there at Cannon Hill. So, look, hoping to see more about Cannon Hill, and look, I'd love to get up there myself, and hopefully we'll do at some point this year, and I'll keep you posted. But that's a detail that's happening, and I know another place actually in New South Wales, and it's Cooinda Waters, that has a detail around some of their bunkers with these railway sleepers as well. So it's something unusual, a little bit different, not often seen in Australia, but a detail that we've certainly seen on television with the likes of Pete Dye, like I mentioned. Now, there's a bit of architecture news happening that I've come across as well, and that is from Ben Davey from Contour Golf. He's doing some preliminary work with Bannockburn Golf Club, which is just outside Geelong in Victoria, to redesign their 18 sandscape greens to be converted to grass greens. So that's some preliminary work with the club. They're going to see if it's something that they'll be able to get through. And look, by all accounts, Bannockburn's a sort of an enjoyable golf course, a challenging course, but if they bring these grass greens into it, it could really lift its profile just outside Geelong. So one, I'll keep an eye on and keep you informed, but Ben Davies doing a little bit of prelim stuff there at Bannockburn. That's going to, like I mentioned, it's going to be a huge change to the course, and apparently they've got a good water supply of unlimited treated water. So if it gets through, you want to keep your eye on this place, like I mentioned, and that's probably the push for the change there, that they've got a water supply now at Bannockburn. So good stuff to see that's happening there. And I've also heard that Ben's been appointed at Quarry Hill Golf Club in Bendigo to complete a course master plan for the club. So, good to see golf courses, regional courses, getting their smarts on, getting an architect in, and doing things properly, and getting a master plan done up before they start any work. I cannot begin to tell you, if you are a member of a club, a committee member or a board member at a club, I cannot begin to tell you how important it is to have a master plan before you start work. Not after you complete the irrigation system and before you start renovating your golf course and rebuilding, redesigning. Before you do any of that. Because I've heard, and I'm still hearing, up to today, I'm still hearing of golf courses, and I won't name names, I'm still hearing of golf courses that will spend over $1 million installing an irrigation system and then go out and get a master plan built, or then adjust their golf holes, or then, redesign the golf course. You've just spent $1 million. You're going to spend another $300,000, $500,000 changing it all after you rebuild the holes, or some of the holes. It's so backwards. It's such a waste of money. But here we are at Quarry Hill Golf Club in Bendigo, large regional town in Victoria, and they've engaged Ben Davey from Contour Golf to do a master plan before they start anything. That's the important part. Before they start. I can't stress it enough. And like I said, I'm still hearing it. It's just so bizarre to me that golf clubs are going to go about wasting money and go, we'll adjust the holes later on, but we need the irrigation system in right now. So anyway, look, good stuff happening at Quarry Hill there in Bendigo, and no doubt this master plan is going to be a great tool for the club and the course moving forward in their desired direction, and they want to slowly improve their golf course as they can and chip and chew things off, and this is a great way to set your place up to do it properly. And that's a wrap of Walking the Fairways. Welcome once again to the Greenkeepers Shed, down to my humble little maintenance facility where I get to give you the inside scoop and some information about what is going on from the inside out, or what goes on from the inside out when maintaining a golf course. Now, the topic for this episode, or this segment of this episode, is it's multiple courses within a course and the psyche behind golf course setup. Now, in this topic, I want to talk to you about how you can play a number of different golf courses at your home course, or indeed a course you visit regularly. Every golf course has the ability for you to experience it played from different tee positions. Too many players, in my opinion, get caught up on this length business, whereby the longer the hole, and in turn the longer the course, a better experience you obviously must get. Now, for me, this couldn't be any more wrong if possible, and I really get defensive, I get frustrated when I hear people mention these little things about length. It's got to be long, it's got to be long, it's got to be great. Even if we play it from the blacks, where's the back plate that we can play the hole the furthest from? It's whilst I love it and I enjoy it, it's not the means or the reason behind what makes a great golf hole or makes a great golf course. The other thing I wanted to mention was that other people get caught up on the notion that a golf course must be set up the exact same for the same recurring competition day. For example, a midweek comp must be played in the middle. The markers must be set up in the middle teeing area. Saturday comps and markers must be played, say, 3/4 back on the teeing areas. For medals and championship events, it must absolutely be played from the furthest back tee position possible at all times. Now, I've had stand-up arguments myself with members of my old golf course about the location of tee markers for medal comps, where if one tee, for example, I didn't have the markers put at the back, then it was incorrectly placed and must be moved. It's not right. One year, with a particular captain of a golf club, I had an official complaint made against me for not having my staff put all the markers in the exact same location on a midweek comp. And they were always meant to be in the same place week in, week out. I started moving them around a bit as we had 9/10 of our teeing area unused. But like I said, I had an official complaint made against me. So, I wanted to talk to you about, I want to give you some information behind a way that you can better experience golf, because I think we we get stuck in our ways as golfers. I think regular golfers get caught in the fact that, we're off a 15 handicap and we play Wednesday and we play Thursday and we play Saturday, for example, and we know where when we go out, we know how we're going to play golf because it's the same. But that's not golf. So look, moving on. I digress a little bit. I'm already getting anxious talking about it and agitated. So look, these days golf courses have slope ratings that's measured from multiple locations in each teeing area, and this will in turn adjust your handicap accordingly. Apparently, in inverted commas, apparently so. So that the longer the course is played, the higher your handicap is adjusted using the slope rating. Now, I'll speak from my course again that I looked after, that's now closed, being the Old Katoomba golf course in the Blue Mountains west of Sydney, where we had 4 ratings done on our course, being the blue, the white, the red, and the yellow, where blue was the longest and yellow was the shortest. Now, yellow was quite short in my opinion, but that doesn't mean it was any less challenging or enjoyable as a teeing area, as a teeing location. In fact, I'd argue that most golfers in Australia that I've come across fight to play Stableford competition, which, for those that aren't certain or are not sure, new to the game, Stableford is a points-based competition. They prefer to play that. They fight to make sure that most of the competitions are Stableford over a stroke competition because, and they won't tell you this is what I believe is the root theory behind it. It's because they feel better about themselves by not having, because Stableford competition doesn't allow you to have a blowout score on a hole, and it keeps them on, in my opinion, on somewhat of a false handicap, which the blowout scores are more likely to happen playing stroke competitions where you count every shot. Yet they will not play from the forward teeing area because it's too easy for them and they look like they're up to the challenge playing from further back. So what I'm saying there is that a 15 handicapper that, these guys have fought hard and played regular golf throughout their golfing career to get down to 15 handicap, but they'll always play Stableford and they find stroke events too difficult. Why do they find stroke events too difficult? In my opinion, because they'll go out and have a couple of 8s. But a Stableford point scoring system won't allow you to have that higher score on the hole. It only lets you have 2 over your handicap on the hole. And then that's it, no more. But you might have an 8 or a 10. You might hit a couple of balls out of bounds or in the drink, and you'll have an 8, or you have a couple of 8s. And that can blow your score out in a stroke event because you've got to keep counting. You've got to keep counting. Don't get me wrong, there is a place for Stableford. It speeds up play. There's a lot of positives for it. But at the end of the day, what I'm talking about is where people want golf courses set up the same and they will only play Stableford competitions so that they can consistently keep their handicap at a false number because 15 is better than 20, right? 10's better than 12. Or 20 is better than 30. And it just makes people feel better. And I'm not saying that like I said, I'm not saying that there's nowhere for these things to happen in the game. But I struggle. All these things will bounce back to golf course setup in some way. So I had these arguments with my club committee and some of my members. At the end of the day, they won't play from the forward tee because they're better than that. But then they make sure that they only play Stableford, and 95% of the competitions at our club were Stableford because they were better than playing at the forward tee, but they couldn't play stroke because it was too hard. So this is my argument. This is where I'm coming from. So, they felt that they were better than the forward tees. I'm telling you, they're not. They're not. You can play from it. I used to play a 5. I don't play regularly anymore, so my handicap's probably realistically 7 or 8 or 9. But I enjoy playing from the forward tees for the challenge of a slightly different type of challenge than as I do playing the back tees. So, look, now I'm talking about mostly men. I never came across this problem with our lady members at Katoomba. A little bit interesting, wasn't it? Don't you find? Now, the ladies at Katoomba were a wonderful bunch of members to work for at Katoomba. I've got to be honest. They were fantastic. I want you to consider, and it's just a side point, I just never had this issue with the ladies. That said, I probably did have the issue sometimes where they felt that they were too far back, but we did have a few waste carries and water carries where they struggled to hit across it. That was some design parts of the golf course. So that's a side point. But for the men, mostly the issue was they wouldn't play if the markers were changed up or moved forward. Now, I want you to consider the design and architecture of a course you play regularly for a minute. When you play from the back tees, you might find that some or most fairway bunkers might not come into play for you at all from the back tees, for example. But if you play from a forward tee, let's say 30 metres forward, sure, the hole measures less in length, but now those fairway bunkers that were out of reach, now they're within reach. Now, you might just now reach them if you get a good one off a tee. So do you play to avoid them or do you lay back? All of a sudden, these things start coming into your head. What does this thought process do to you at the top of your backswing when you think you're going to rip one off a tee and then think, shit, I might hit it in there now? Whereas when you're from the back tees, it's not even a thought. You just hit it and then it's sort of in between your shots. After thinking about all those things at the top of your backswing, you come down differently, potentially mishit your shot, and all of a sudden, the short hole, because now you're playing from a forward tee, but the fairway bunkers are in play, or the hazard in that reachable zone now is in play, all of a sudden, the short hole you were meant to capitalise on is now much tougher because you went left off a tee and are now in the rough, for example. Not an easier shot on the large portion of fairway at the start of the hole. Now times that by 18, and you have a different golf course to what you would normally experience when you go out and play regularly from the same tee positions. What about on that par 3, for example, where you hit a 6-iron every time and you know how hard to hit that 6-iron and you know just where it's going to go when you do it? I'm not saying you can do it all the time, but you know that 6-iron's your shot. And it might be your favourite par 3. It's repetition, right? You're comfortable because you've become good at that particular par 3. What if now it's only a 9-iron? Say you've gone 30 metres forward. It's a long way on a par 3. A long way on a par 3. Say you've gone from a 140 metre hole down to a 110 metre hole. All of a sudden it's a 9-iron in your hand. All of a sudden it's different. And even though it's shorter, it doesn't mean that it's easier. Because we're still swinging a golf club, guys. We're still hitting a golf ball at the end of that stick. Now, if being a shorter course meant that golf was much easier, we'd all be professionals playing the game and earning a living doing so, right? Have you ever played a par 3 course for a short course? I can tell you it's not that much easier at all, which is why we find that we love the sport so much more than we realise. Golf is not meant to be fair, in inverted commas, as Lee Westwood stated after his ball finished in a divot at the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill. And Jack Nicklaus is famous for saying, golf is not and never has been a fair game. It's the luck of the draw, the roll of the dice, chance, whatever you want to call it. All these things that if we took away from golf, we might as well walk up there and replace the ball everywhere we are, where the ball lands and we're about to hit from. Oh, wait, hang on. Sorry. They do that at plenty of golf courses. It's called preferred lies, and that in itself is a joke. Don't start me on that one. Don't start me on that one. Plenty of you out there probably think that preferred lies is a good thing. But that's not golf. And why would you... Okay, I'll go down the rabbit hole. Why would you have preferred lies when it's dry, conditions aren't considered, in inverted commas, great, rough is non-existent, bit dusty, patchy, fairways are patchy, not a lot of water around, the dams are low, they can't, the greenkeepers can't use the water to keep the grass alive on fairways very well. So why would you use preferred lies on the fairways on a better part of the golf course than in the rough? If you're going to even do it, why would you do preferred lies on the fairway and not in the rough? So wouldn't your preferred lies be where the areas are worse off than better off? But I go back to my point, that's not golf. We are playing on a landscape that changes. You've heard me talk about it and I bark on about it. It changes with Mother Nature. It changes with the seasons. If it's a wet year, we're going to have more grass. And it's probably going to be more consistent. It's probably going to be better. If you have a dry year, it's probably going to be more patchy. It's probably going to be uneven. It's probably going to be very hard and bouncy. There'll be high, growing grasses in the rough, for example, and there'll be bare areas in the rough, and you'll get stuck behind tufts of grass, and there'll be dust, and fairways will be patchy. You might hit off some bare, dry, crusty bits of grass, and other areas as you get closer to the greens, irrigation, for example, you might get some nice grass areas to hit off. Who cares? And I say who cares politely because it's an outside sport played on a landscape that Mother Nature dictates most of the time, because we try and fight back as much as we can with modern irrigation systems. Like I said, it's not about it being perfect all the time. That wouldn't be a sport. If you could walk up to every shot and place your ball where you wanted to all the time, it wouldn't be golf. It just wouldn't be a challenging sport. Sorry to go down that rabbit hole, but I do struggle with that preferred lies one. Golf is about taking the good with the bad, being the best at making the most from bad breaks. I think we as people sometimes struggle with the concept and struggle to reconcile that in golf, it is always and only ever us that has an effect on the outcome of a stroke and the landscape that has an effect on where the ball finishes. It's not our direct opponent. Just think about that for a minute. It's not our direct opponent. When we play against other players in golf, they don't hit our ball back to us and then we return it like tennis. It's not the exact same surface we play on week in, week out, like, say, 10-pin bowling, where it's the same no matter where you go. We aren't physically assaulted whilst trying to hit the ball like all the codes of football are. Lawn bowls is probably the closest sport I can think of, which is probably why so many golfers become lawn bowlers once they can't walk the distance of a golf course anymore. Golf it's extremely unique, where it's only us and the landscape that have an effect on how we score during our round. There is no one to blame except ourselves when we don't like the outcome of our shot. Plenty of people try to associate blame to other people, such as the greenkeepers. Trust me, I've been on the receiving end of that, don't worry. The architects, heard about plenty of that one. The committees, the boards, yep, been there, seen that. Shit, even someone from another hole making too much noise whilst we're mid-swing trying to hit a shot. Assign them some blame because we hit a bad one, or it ended up and we mishit it and ended up under a tree. Let's face it, we as humans, we don't like the fact that we, the player, are the only one responsible for the result of our golf ball. That's why I think a lot of people blame other people. Because we don't ever blame ourselves. People don't like taking responsibility for the outcome of their round. Someone has a bad score, has 100 out, they go, oh shit, it was raining. I've said that before. I struggle to play in the rain. I just don't have the right gear. I don't know how to keep my clubs dry properly. And, I struggle. I don't play well and I don't play enough in the rain. But that's probably a little bit of Australia as well, because we don't have a wet environment. We don't play regularly enough in the rain. Most people like playing in the sun down here. If you go to the British Isles, I'm sure it's a bit of a different story. You have to learn. If you want to play golf, you have to learn to play in the wet weather, in the mist, in the drizzle, in the rain, whatever it might be. But we blame all sorts. Blame the wind. If you don't know how to play golf in the wind, that's not the wind's fault. You've just got to learn how to play golf in the wind. I recently got back from Barnbugle Dunes, as you probably know. I went down there and played Barnbugle, and I got all the different wind conditions you could possibly have. To start off with, there was none. And I was like, how good is this place? And day 2 brought me back down to earth very, very quickly. It was a 4-club wind, and I found it very difficult. But I didn't blame the golf course because it was too hard. I didn't blame, it was difficult in the wind. Don't get me wrong. I struggled, and I didn't score or play very, very well at all. But I don't play well in the wind. I don't play enough in the wind to be able to control my ball very well. I'm not very good at it. But that's not the wind's fault. That's not the golf course's fault for being built there. That's part of your experience. That's part of playing golf. And if you don't like those conditions, don't play there. That's fine. We have choice. That's the beauty of it. We can be a member of the course that we like the most. We can be a member of a course that we like the conditions of more regularly. We can choose to not play in certain conditions. But don't blame the greenkeepers. Don't blame, old mate on the other fairway that just scored an eagle and he's jumping for joy, screaming and, he probably won a couple of bets and he put you off your shot. It's your problem. Get over it. Get on with it. Look, now that I've had that tangent, you can think about how a golf course is set up. Other people, Greenkeepers Committee, set up courses as they feel appropriate, full stop. But what I want you to think about is that you can play a number of different golf courses within the same course just by moving the markers. And by doing so, you can have a different experience and challenge without driving to another golf course. You can challenge yourself and others by changing up how you play essentially the same hole, but you now have to make some different choices getting to the green, which in turn mildly changes your experience. Now, in my opinion, it should be a lottery as to what distance golf course you play each time you play the same course. This keeps your handicap relevant, it keeps you on top of your game, with a wide variety of shots and shot choices throughout your playing career as a golfer. More so than you would usually have playing the same course all the time. So whether it's, Mother Nature dishing it up, changing your experience, we don't play in a vacuum, we don't play in a enclosed stadium. We've got Mother Nature. But equally, a course setup affects the way you think about your way around the golf course, the way you play around the golf course. The course setup, whether the markers are forward, are as much a challenge as if the markers are back. The challenge just is not the carry from the tee to the fairway. The challenge is not the distance from the tee to the green. The challenge is that it changes your way of thinking. I used to play my old golf course that I was a member of growing up at Wentworth Falls, and the committee there, like most committees I've come across on some of these semi-private golf courses, member public access courses, they didn't change their competitions much at all. I can tell you now, the medals were in the same spot every month. The regular Saturday competitions were in the same spot to tee off from. I could go around Wentworth Falls and use half of my golf bag because I didn't have a lot of options to make. I didn't have a lot of choices to make. It was the same I played all the time. And let me tell you, that gets boring because you're not challenged. We play golf to be challenged. That's what we do. We play golf. It's a personal endeavor to beat yourself. Not that many sports do that. Like I said, you don't play against someone else. They don't hit your ball back to you and you've got to hit it again. It's just where you hit it, you deal with what you did, and you make the most of bad breaks if you get a bad one. But the idea behind it is that behind design and behind greenkeeping, is that if you hit it in better areas to play the hole that are designed in such a way, you've got more chance of having good breaks. And the further away you hit it from those ideal locations, you've got more chance of having not so good breaks. And you have to deal with those consequences. That's the nature of the sport. And that's the psyche behind a golf course setup. And that's what playing multiple courses within a golf course is. Committees and members and that really shouldn't have the ideology of keeping the golf course the same all the time on the same competitions. And golfers should get their heads around, in my opinion, playing from different locations all the time. Now, I get that we don't like change. As humans, it's nature. It's our nature. It's our makeup. We don't like change in general. But like I said, golf is a personal challenge. It's a personal endeavor. And I really think that we need to mix things up a little bit more as golf courses and the way we set up golf courses. We need to challenge the players, and that challenge is not only about length. Get your head around it, guys. It's not only about length. Now, there's going to be plenty of people out there that disagree with me. Plenty. So be it. But I'm telling you from the inside out that the reason we move the pins, the reason we move the holes on a golf green is to give you a change. We can't move bunkers. You can't move a green regularly, but we can move the hole on a green to give you different putts, to give you a challenge. We can move tee markers on a tee to in turn effectively move the green and move the fairway bunkers and move the greenside bunkers. That's what changing the tee position does, is it moves the things you can't move by changing where you're hitting off from. So if you've got a short par 4, and I love a good short par 4, drivable par 4, kind of. If you've got a short par 4 where, say, you hit driver and a wedge, right? You hit driver because it gets you right up near it, and then you hit a wedge in. But that's from the back. But if you move the tee markers forward, all of a sudden, you can hit driver in the greenside bunkers. So you got to go back to a 3-wood. Did you hit the 3-wood the same? Did you manage to hit it clean? Because it's a different club. Are you thinking about that if you really get it and smoke it away, you might end up in the same spot? You might get a good bounce, end up in a greenside bunker. Who knows? You might mishit it too short and all of a sudden it's not a sand wedge, it's a 9-iron or a pitching wedge. It's not that shot. So this is what I'm talking about. It changes your way of thinking. And that's the essence behind simply moving tee markers and moving hole positions on greens, for example. I didn't talk about that because that's just more about the putting and your approach angles and shots in. But it's the greens. All these things are moved by simply moving the tee markers. We're moving bunkers and greens without moving bunkers and greens, guys. So, look, I think there's more to it. I think we need to keep changing it up more. And I urge you to talk to your club about it. If you think that it's too regular, too much the same, and you want a bit more of a challenge, ask them why not. And that Greenkeepers will always move it for wear anyway, for the tee marker positions. But, like I said, I was reprimanded because I was moving it up. They didn't care whether it was wear and tear. We had to move it a foot only, just to keep it the same. So that's multiple courses within a course and the psyche behind golf course setup, guys. I hope you enjoyed that segment of the Greenkeepers Shed, and I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. Thanks again for coming along and listening. I appreciate your time. As always, please like, share, subscribe the podcast. I do appreciate it. Need all the help we can get to keep getting this discussion out there and keep showing people what's happening on golf courses throughout Australia and showing people some of the inside out of a golf course as well. So, look, I appreciate it. All your support, guys, as always, comments and feedback and discussions. I'm open to everything. Please open up a chat with me. Happy to discuss. And thank you so much for coming along and listening to episode 16 of the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast.